you start seeing this internal gap start to materialize too, in terms of, how profitable is this project being? What are the expectations, and are we strategically delivering on what we promised we would? And all kinds of, it's a client facing gap and an internal gap that starts to appear when there's a disconnect.
Welcome to the Agency Profit Podcast, a show dedicated to going deep space on agency operations, which is just as nerdy as it sounds. I'm your host, Marcel Petitpas. I'm the CEO of Parakeeto, a firm that helps digital and creative agencies measure and improve their profitability. Join me as I interview some of the smartest thought leaders and agency owners in our space and go deep into operations, metrics, and all the other things you need to get right so you can spend less time worrying about operations and more time executing on your vision. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Agency Profit Podcast. Here with Kristen once again. Kristen, welcome back.
Thank you, Marcel. Nice to be here. Good to see you.
You as well. We are recording this just 1 week from shutting things down for the holidays.
Indeed. Yeah, it's really hard to believe that this is where we're at.
Yep. Time is a human construct.
It has
not
been
real. We're not going to go down that route.
No, I was going to say that's a longer, we might get into that maybe some today. We'll see.
Yeah, well, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, with that, yes, we're here to talk about something I think that's really important. I've been talking about this on LinkedIn a little bit, and I sent out an email about it. But yeah, we've just been realizing like, hey, we've never really talked about like why any of this matters.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, why don't you tee us up for today?
Yeah. So I think, to your point, you've been communicating about this a little bit on LinkedIn. You recently posted and emailed that email had a subject line that was pretty provocative. And I think the LinkedIn hook was the same. It's like, you don't actually care about profitability. And that may have raised a few eyebrows, given that, our whole business is agency metrics, maybe seemed out of left field for a few people. So really, we're here today to kind of give more context to that, talk about where that's coming from. And maybe a good place to start is like, I think we've known now, you've known, and Carson and I have known that perhaps there's been something off about our positioning or the way we're communicating our values, perhaps public facing for a while now, but couldn't put our finger maybe on exactly what or why. And so I guess, how would you have previously described our position to the company, our positioning to the public, rather, as a company?
Yeah. Well, and positioning is an interesting topic. What does that really mean? And I wouldn't say that we've clarified our positioning yet at a category level or anything like that, at least not at the time that we're recording this, but some things are becoming more clear. And one of the things that became really clear recently, and we'll talk about how it became clear, was that we talk a lot about the sort of functional benefits of what we do. We help you improve your profitability. That's like the main outcome that we talk about. We talk about how we do that, the process for that, our philosophy, our mechanisms, our tools, our frameworks, all of that stuff. So like, I think at this point in time, at a very tactical level, like we're very good at talking about profitability, why people don't have it, what they need to do to get it, and how we work with them to get it. Like that stuff is all very clear. But what we were never really talking about is like why any of that matters. So what, right? And I think at some point I realized like I thought it was all implied, or maybe I was just so focused on profit that I overlooked the fact that like it's not actually the thing that almost any of our clients are after. And it's certainly not the reason like you and I get up in the morning and go to work every day. Like I don't get some like huge rush from knowing that the owner of a business is able to buy like a third summer home in Connecticut because they're just like making so much money. I do love seeing small business owners get rewarded for their hard work, but it's not just about the profit itself. It's about all these other things. And I think that's true about a lot of our clients too. Like they're not actually motivated by money. They're motivated by the things that money allows them to do, which are often like much deeper than that. So this became clear. And then in looking at like how we talk about ourselves online and what our website says and what our content talks about, like we've just never really gone to that level. And I think it's important because My friend Rich described it as like the emotional ladder. We're missing the sort of top rungs on the emotional ladder. As the book behind me says, like start with why. Like we never really got to the why. We never really talked about the why. So I'm hoping we could talk about the why today.
Yeah. Well, take us back to your day with Rich. Like, I know that you mentioned in, all of these updates to the public that you had something called you went through something called a dig. So tell me about the dig and what that process or day was like.
Well, first I'll tell you about Rich, who's one of my favorite human beings on planet Earth. I've known Rich for, over a decade now. I met him back in like 2013 when I first moved to Moncton, New Brunswick. And at the time, he ran an agency called Razor Creative, which was like the local creative agency that like most of the local brands worked with. And he had clients that were outside of Moncton and New Brunswick as well. But like him and Stephen Brander, his business partner, like they were the guys that if you needed creative work done, like you went and saw them, and they were very well known, very well liked in the community, very talented creatives, worked with everybody. And they did that for like 20 years. And when I first met them, they were still running Razor. And a few years later, they sold that business, and then Rich just was kind of like freelancing and doing whatever after that, and started really finding his passion in this process that he called dig, which is like this process, this very elaborate process that he takes people through to help them really design a brand, but do it from this place of really deeply understanding themselves and their customer and the market, and like bringing all those things and putting them together. And so when I posted on LinkedIn a few weeks ago about our positioning struggles, he sent me a text and he just said like, I miss you and I feel compelled to come and see you and help you with this. And so he offered to just like drive to my house. And basically the deal was, if you can give me a bed to sleep in and dinner, then I will just come and hang out with you for the day and we will work on this together. And so that's what we did. And we had an amazing day, just like hanging out. We spent the first half of it talking about spirituality and life and meditating and, the wonders of the universe. And then we spent the back half of the day going through just a small portion actually of the dig process. Like we could have spent 2 days on it, but we sort of did an abridged version. But even in that short amount of time, there was a lot of revelations. And, it was just a lot of Rich asking me questions that on the surface seemed like simple questions, but, then we would spend 45 minutes talking about them. And then he would repeat what he heard back to me in a way that like I had never heard before. And I understood myself and I understood these things better than before we started the process. And so that led to all kinds of big realizations. But this idea that like we were missing this entire why part of the way we talk about our business was one of the most important revelations from my perspective.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that brought everything kind of back into alignment with your values? And, by finding out the company's values, it kind of recentered yourself as well. Do you feel like that's true? Yeah.
100%. And this was obvious to me. It was obvious in the facilitation that it was like, he's digging into all these different places and then connecting the dots between them. And that's really what happened. And so like part of the conversation early on in the day was just like, why am I doing this? Right? Like, why do I care about this? And my philosophy, this has been my philosophy for a very long time. You could go back 5-10 years, find podcast interviews where I talk about this idea. I fundamentally believe that business and a for-profit company is the most powerful vehicle for social change in the world. It is in my opinion, it is orders of magnitude more effective than government can ever be. And even that not-for-profits can never be. Not to say that not-for-profits don't have a role to play in the social change ecosystem, but the challenge with a not-for-profit is that it is not fundamentally built on the creation of value in the way that a business is. It relies on donations and people, doing charity to sustain itself and to go out and action its mission in the world. Whereas a business exists because it goes to the marketplace and solves a problem, and in doing so creates value, and then builds a business model around that is structured to capture some of that value. And the natural state of a well-run business with good people running it should be that it creates value by selling things to people because it solves a problem that is worth solving, that does good just in solving it. So if their customers benefit, their employees benefit because they get gainful employment and develop skills, and like that has like a massive ripple effect. In the case of agencies, like their success is tied to the success of like tons of small businesses, which we know is like the backbone of our entire economy. And generally speaking, founders that have, a good moral compass, when they're feeling abundant and successful, they tend to want to go and do good things with that money. They tend to want to give back and pay it forward and support causes that are, valuable to them, and give people opportunities and treat their people well. And like it's often more than just about money for them. And when a business has a social purpose and then is creating funds to support that social purpose, like when you think about all those different vectors where good is happening, I just don't see any vehicle that has the potential to impact the world more positively than a profitable business. And I just really believe that. And so like for me, that's where I get my motivation, is like, I think supporting agencies, which in turn supports this very long tail of small businesses, is like a very long lever for actioning this belief that I have, which is like, we can make the world a better place by making good, like well-intentioned entrepreneurs successful, so they can go and like have this impact on the world in a way that I think is just like fundamentally sustainable.
Yeah. The words you just said, so that, are the real shift, right? So it's profitability so that. Yeah, I mean, why do you think that agencies just fall into the trap of just fixating on profitability as opposed to the so that?
So, so I think there's a bunch of different answers to this question. So, the first thing is like, we were fixated on profitability, but I actually don't think that like a lot of our clients and a lot of people that we are exposed to in the marketplace are fixated on this. Like when I think about our best clients and I think about a lot of the people that we interact with, very few of them are fixated on profitability. And this was like the big revelation. I talked to Rich, who's like, he's a successful entrepreneur. He ran a very successful business, had a successful exit. And, at one point he said to me, he's like, in the 20 years of running Razor, I don't think I used the word profitability once. Literally not once. And, in talking more about it, what we came to the realization of is like, most of the people that we know that started agencies started them so that they could work with cool clients and do great work and hire awesome people and have a lot of fun and have creative freedom. And yes, like get some amount of financial security, but that's ultimately like not the end goal. And in fact, a lot of them are uncomfortable with the idea of being too profitable. And given an excess amount of money, like they'll just like find things to do with them that is not lining their own pockets. And so like, that's not really the point. But what is true is they get to this place usually in their business where they realize like, well, I can't get any of those things and I can't create any of those things and I can't do any of that good unless the money side of the business is taken care of. And so it was this reframe of like, we spend so much time talking about profitability like it's the point. And it is a necessary thing. It's a domino that needs to fall. But what we don't spend any time talking about is like the so what, right? Once we get money out of the way, then what does that unlock for our clients? And it's like all the stuff that they actually care about, right? And so that was like one big thing, which is like, I don't think agencies really get fixated on profitability a whole lot unless they're like the thing that most of our clients are trying to get away from, which is like the big firm that they worked for before they started their own thing, that is like passing on the generational trauma of the agency space, which has a horrible reputation for just like hiring young, talented people, exploiting the crap out of them and burning them out. And like, that's the reputation that we have as an industry. Big consulting firms, big advertising agencies, there's still some of them around. And I think a lot of the folks that we work with, they're trying to break that pattern. And so there's this other realization of like, we don't talk about this enough, because I would imagine that there's some people that, maybe they haven't listened to the podcast, but they come across our website, they see that we're profitability consultants. And the first place their mind goes is like, they're going to turn me into the old shop that I was at. And that's the last thing I want. And it's like, no, actually, we really want to, and I've talked about this, but not enough. Like, we want to show people that you can do it. You can have a sustainable business and not do all of the things that we hate about this industry. You don't have to work people crazy hours. You don't have to have your team subsidize your poor management of clients with their evenings and weekends. Like, you don't have to hire the cheapest possible people. You don't have to do all these things. You can run a sustainable business that does good by all of the stakeholders and not have to succumb to all of these things. And that's like a really important thing for me to prove to people and to show people like, this is how you can do it. And you don't have to do it one way. We can do it within the constraints of like the kind of team and culture that you want to build. But on the surface, it just looks like we're going to be a bunch of suits that come in and tell you that you need your team to work 40 billable hours a week. So like, of course that would be off-putting to somebody who started their own thing specifically because like they were sick of working in that environment and seeing people do it that way and wanted to do it differently. So that's kind of a non-answer to your question, I suppose. Like, why are agencies fixated on profitability? And I guess the answer is like, I think we were fixated on it in our messaging, but the reality is like most firms are not fixated on profitability. It's just this thing that they know they need to do so that they can get to the things that they actually care about.
Yeah. I think when you first shared this reframing with Carson and I, it really resonated with both of us, mostly because he and I were agency side for a significant amount of time. And some of that trauma, I think, is embedded in both Carson and I. And one of the reasons why we really enjoy helping agency owners kind of break that mold moving forward and feel confident, just carrying that and trying to do good and fix that moving forward too. Really values aligned. Yeah. Okay. Oh, go ahead. You were going to say something.
I was going to say, like, I think one of the things that would be interesting to touch on here is like, why is this so hard? Why is money in the way in so many firms? Because I think like when we talk about the problems that we solve, we tend to fixate on the nuances of it. But in this discussion, I think I came to like the key issue, which is like, profitability is a multifaceted, complicated problem. It touches every part of the business. It kind of sits at the center of like finance and operations and new business. And so on most teams, it touches a bunch of different people. And one of the problems with our industry and with this problem in general is that there isn't a job that owns profitability. Like it just doesn't exist. In fact, Rich Brett, my pal and I, who's been on the show before, we like to get on calls sometimes and just complain to each other about, the nuances and challenges of being profitability consultants or FinOps consultants. And this is one of the most painful things is he did a post after one of our chats about like, hey, whose job is it to own profitability? And like, there was zero consensus. Some people said it's finance. Some people said it's ops. Some people said it's the CEO. Some people said it's all of them, right? It's like there just isn't an answer. The answer is kind of all of those things. And so inevitably what ends up happening is as the CEO, you kind of have to, or the managing director, whoever's running the firm, you sort of have to be the quarterback. And then what you have to try to do is take, whatever your finance department looks like and whatever your ops department looks like, and maybe you hire some consultants, maybe you get some software, and you got to try to like mash all of these things together. But the problem is like, what is the scope for a CFO? What is the scope for your ops director? Like, what is your scope as the CEO? It's very amorphous. There's a lot of gray. These lines are not very clear. And so inevitably you're trying to put together a puzzle that has a whole bunch of round edges. And you just end up with all these gaps and all these seams, and it never feels like it's coming together. And at the end of the day, it's like, that's the last thing that almost any of the clients that we work with that are running an agency want to be spending their time on. They have zero interest in it. And the rest of the stakeholders don't really want to be spending their time on this either. And like, that is the problem. It's like if there was no general contractors, and so everybody just had to build their own house. And they, you could go hire an electrician, you could hire the concrete person, you could hire the carpenter, but like it was up to you to figure out who needed to show up when and who's doing what and where the handoff points. It's like, it's insane. That's kind of what it feels like as the managing director who was like a CD at a big agency before, no finance background. You wake up one day, you have a 30-person team, and you're like, okay, let me try to figure out how to quarterback a profitability team. It's like, of course that's going to suck, especially if you want nothing to do with it. And that is why we exist. Right? Because there just has never really been a solution to that. There's solutions to all these little parts of it, but the part of like, how do I put all those pieces together to actually get a solution to this problem and just like have the money be taken care of in a way that is holistic and that looks like the whole business? No one's ever really said, we're going to take that on, because it's really hard, right? But like, that's what we've done over the last 7 years. And I think like that's, again, this thing that we've never really gotten to, but is truly the problem that we solve, is like, hey, just you don't have to worry about this anymore. Let us worry about this. And like, go back to being an awesome creative director, go back to being an amazing marketing strategist, go back to being a world-class consultant, and we'll make sure that the money's out of the way. Do you want some free resources to help you measure and improve your profitability? If you do, then I want to tell you about our agency profitability toolkit, which you can grab absolutely free in the show notes or by heading to parakeeto.com/toolkit. It's packed with training videos, cheat sheets, templates, and all kinds of other great resources to help you start measuring and improving the essential metrics that are going to drive better profitability in your business. And it's helped thousands of other agencies around the world do the same. So I want to encourage you to go and grab a copy of that. And if you'd rather get in the fast lane and just have our team of experts guide you through the process of measuring and improving your profitability, then I want to encourage you to apply for a consultation at parakeeto.com. With that, I want to thank you again for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the episode, and I'll let you get back to it.
Yeah. I think that's congruent with a lot of the case studies that we have from clients that we've worked with. It's not always that a certain metric is trending in a certain way. It's that we've empowered, the leadership team or the founder to not worry about this anymore. They show up to the coaching meeting with us once a month. They get the insight that they need, and they feel like it's handled, right? And I think that's where a lot of the success stories come from, in addition to, things, improvements of all different types.
I'm glad you used the word empowered, because I remember one of the exercises that Rich had me do was he had like a 2-minute timer, and then he would bring up like brand, culture, clients. There was like a couple of different columns, and basically it was like, okay, you have 2 minutes, say every adjective that you want these things to reflect for Parakeeto. And so we did brand, and then we did culture, and then we did all of these things. And when it came to the customer, and the question was like, how do you want your customer to feel? So we went through, and I had like 30 adjectives for each of them. And then he was like, okay, now you need to pick your top 3. And then I had to pick just one for each of the columns. And for customers, that was the word that I ended up landing on in the end, was empowered. Like, that's really what we want, is we want them to feel empowered. It was that. And then like my top 3 was like empowered, fearless, and abundant. Right. And fearless was another front runner, where it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, imagine if every client that we worked with was just absolutely fearless. They weren't worried about money. They weren't worried about, taking creative risks and losing a client because they knew that they can handle it. They weren't worried about hiring the talent that they wanted to hire. They weren't worried about positioning themselves the way that they wanted to position themselves. Like they had some level of like financial security and confidence and empowerment, where they could just like show up in their business in a completely fearless way. Like, just like, how awesome is that? How amazing would that be? And how cool would it be to see like what our clients would do if they all felt that way all the time? And I think money is like one of the areas of the business that really undermines their ability to feel that way a lot of the time. And so I'm glad you used that word, because it's an important one in terms of like, for us, like, what are we really trying to do? How are we trying to make people feel? Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm. I like that you you had fearless and abundance beyond just confident. That takes it like a step further. It's really puts the ownership and the power back in their hands. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think I've talked about this earlier, but it's like, I really believe that, the clients that we love working with, they're fundamentally good people. And when they're feeling abundant, and when they're feeling fearless, and when they're doing well, everybody around them benefits from that. They do great things for their team. They do great things for their clients. They do great things for their community. Like, that is what lights them up. And so it's like, to make them more successful ends up being a good thing for everyone.
Yeah. So now that all of this is said out loud, how does this shift, Parakeeto moving forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, we've been talking about this internally as a team quite a bit. And some of this, we've started talking about a little bit more publicly. But the first thing is, like, I think we need to talk about this side of things more. And, I certainly have the intention to try and make a lot of this messaging more visible. And that's a work in progress. By the time you're listening to this, maybe some of that work will already have been done. The other side of this is I think it has really, we've been having this conversation over the last 2 quarters, and it's really coming to a head now, which is like, how do we really just get to a place where it's like we take care of the money, period? Let us just worry about this. And the big, the elephant in the room around that for a long time has been the accounting and bookkeeping piece. And for a lot of our clients, like, they're happy with what they have going on in that part of the business, and we just plug in, and that's great. And we continue to do that. And we're happy to do that. And in fact, I think I prefer to do that, because it's just like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We're trying to get to the answers that we need as quickly as possible. And restructuring your chart of accounts is like not a side quest that if we can avoid going on that side quest, let's avoid it. But it also is true that there are some of our clients that are not in that situation. They're not happy with that side of their business. They're not confident in it, or the way that things are being done is undermining their ability to get to the confidence that they want and to the fearlessness that they want. And so in those cases, we need a solution. And we've tried partnership routes and, a number of things. And it's starting to become evident that we may need to take more of a direct approach to having a solution to that problem. And that's something that we've been working very hard on trying to validate and roll out going forward. So this is like maybe like a soft tease launch of like accounting bookkeeping for Parakeeto, but that taking on like really and the forcing function of us saying, how do we take on the full spectrum of the money side of the business and like really come with the most complete solution so that our clients can like truly exhale when it comes to the money side of their business and know that it is completely handled, completely taken care of by experts who are looking at it holistically. I think that's what people want. And we've resisted that for all kinds of reasons that were somewhat self-serving. Like, I don't really want to run an accounting firm. And, like that, like, that's a tough business and it's a commodity and all these things. Right. But at the end of the day, if I really just like put all those things aside and say, like, what have customers been asking us for? And when I really think deeply about like what the outcome is that we're trying to deliver, what is the vehicle to that? It becomes more and more clear that like that's a side of the business we need to have a better solution for. So that's like on a tactical level, I think one of the changes for us. And there's going to be more, I'm sure, but that's the mindset. I think certainly for me going forward is like, what can we do to allow our clients to finally feel like they can just like not worry about the money and get it out of the way and get back to doing what they set out to do when they started their business in the first place. And I think if we can do that, everybody wins in a really big way.
Yeah, I think you're right. And to your point, I think that, we've heard it in voice of customer. That is what they want. So it's really just, finding that voice and, putting together the right holistic services to take care of that side of the business completely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think importantly, this is like the last thing I'll say about this is like, provide that in a way where it's not up to the client to figure out what the hell the difference is between a CFO and a staff accountant and an ops manager and a FinOps consultant and, an investment advisor and a wealth manager and a family office and an investment banker versus an M&A consultant versus a business coach. Is like, who knows what the difference is between those things? You ask 10 different people, you get 10 different answers. And it's like, at the end of the day, you shouldn't have to try to weed through all of this title bingo bullshit. Like, you should just be able to solve the problem. And so I think that's the thing that we're trying to like really take out of the equation is like all of that stuff and just make it simple.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we actually did go through that exercise of trying to throw a dart and figure out which one most closely resembled what we do. And yeah, the closest was, I think, CFO, but even that wasn't quite it.
Yeah, and this is like the challenge, right, in the positioning. And who knows, maybe we'll have this solved by the time this episode comes out. But like, to come back to your original question about positioning, it's like, do we just like shove ourselves into an existing category, or do we continue to try to like be in our own category? And the reality is, it's like we don't cleanly fit into any given category, because that's kind of the reason that we exist in the first place. Is there isn't a category that solves this problem. There's just all these adjacent categories that solve part of it, but you got to put the puzzle together. And so like, That is the fundamental difference with us. However, that's confusing to people. And so anyway, still work to do on that of like, do we just pick a category that people already know what it is and then tell the rest of the story? I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this that know a lot more about this than we do. So I'm captive to your opinion. Feel free to email me if you have one. But yeah, TBD on where we land with that. But that is what makes this complicated, right? It's like at a fundamental level, like we exist because the category doesn't, you know?
But I think where we've arrived with the outcome that we're able to achieve for our clients is, 100% a good lead for anyone who's trying to, let's say, an operator who comes across us and is trying to actually explain this to their CEO. I think that's exactly how you explain it. They take care of the money, so we don't have to, and empower our leadership team.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess that's kind of the closing thought here is, what we haven't talked about, but what I thought was important to say out loud, and I'm glad we had this opportunity to do it, was like, at the end of the day, it's not about the money. We just want to get it out of the way so that you can do what you set out to do, take care of your team, do awesome work, and be secure and successful for all the risk that you took to start your business. And if that is compelling, then we would love to talk to you about it. But that's the reason we all get out of bed in the morning. So there you have it.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, Kristen, I think that's a wrap.
I think you're
29
right.
minutes.
Yeah.
29 minutes of waxing philosophical. Well, with that, happy holidays to you. Happy holidays to everyone that is listening to this. Maybe the holidays have already passed. I don't know when this is coming out, but whenever it does, happy holidays. And I hope that you had some rest and had a good time. And we will see you on the next episode.
See you in 2026.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've ever found yourself thinking, man, I get so much value from this podcast, I wish there was something I could do to return the favor. Well, today's your lucky day because you can leave us a review wherever you're listening to this, and it is incredibly helpful. Of course, if you haven't grabbed a free copy of the Agency Profit Toolkit, go and get that. It's got tons of free resources to help you improve your profitability. If you're looking to get in the fast lane and get help from experts to improve your profitability and measure your most important metrics, then apply for a consultation at Parakeeto.com. We'd love to chat with you and figure out how we can help. With all of that, thank you so much for being a listener, and we will see you on the next episode.